He was the PR director at car shopping site cargurus.com and head of corporate communications at software company Launch Darkly. And now he's taking on PR practices, methods, issues, and a really cool new weekly online publication. He's Brian Kramer. I'm Ed Garsten, and Brian is my guest on episode 110 of Tales from the Beat, where we look at news and PR from both sides of the scrimmage line. You ready to scrimmage there? Hey, Brian, how are you?
I'm ready. Absolutely. Um, Thanks so much for having me, Ed. I really appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. It's great to see you. Just so folks know how we got to know each other, we didn't hook up by swiping right on podcastguest.com or something like that, but we worked right. We worked on a lot of story when you were with Car Gurus and set me up with interviews and great information for my Forbes.com stories, and that's how we got to know. And so great to work with. So it's great to hook up with you again.
Same here. I actually remember the first time we met where I believe I had a pounding migraine in Detroit and could barely get two words out. And our sort of
Uh,
spokesperson analyst at the time had
that's
to
right.
drive most of the conversation. I could barely function. So it's amazing that we're here today,
Yeah,
considering
I
that.
know. Well, I do give people migraines on a regular basis, but no, yeah, I remember that meeting very, very, very distinctly because the analyst at the time was about 9 feet tall, I think, and I'm
And I'm about half.
about that. Yeah, about 8 ounce cup of person.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that was I remember that it was like a breakfast meeting or something, but it was great. It was great.
Yeah.
And we took off from there. So yeah, no, it's been a beautiful relationship. And it's great to get back together with you and catch up and see what you're doing, but also to find out uh, about uh, about this great new newsletter you're doing. So why don't we just start with with that? Tell us what it is and what it's all about and what people can find out when they get on this newsletter.
Yeah. Absolutely. We'll dive right in. So I guess I can start by explaining, I guess, my light bulb moment for how it started, or maybe
Yeah,
light bulbs like, a little strong, maybe more like a candle light,
LED,
but
maybe, yeah.
maybe a little dimmer.
Yeah.
You know, as I look at like the sort of landscape of, communication channels, I think it goes without argument that LinkedIn has become kind of like the de facto channel
Mhm.
for everyone to post their thoughts. When people talk about thought leadership, and that term can be certainly dissected, but LinkedIn has become a very popular place for people to put their thoughts.
Mhm.
And I've certainly seen a trend for lots of PR and communications people to put their thoughts out there on this channel,
All right.
whether it's their clients, their own companies, execs, or even their own thoughts on the industry. And it's not in my personal nature to, come out there with a strong take or post, on a consistent basis. But I noticed that as an industry, people were doing it.
Mhm.
And what I realized upon reflection was that when I looked at the LinkedIn posts that I tended to engage with,
Yeah.
it was actually these posts, either hitting like or maybe throwing a comment in or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, and my assumption was that there might be other comms folks like me who may not want to get up on a soapbox and talk about, you know, griping about an embargo
Mhm.
or what communications means today.
Right.
But at the same time, if they see such a post, they may want to engage.
Sure.
And I thought that uh, there might be an opportunity there. And as I looked sort of around the landscape, I didn't want to create a newsletter just for the sake of it.
Mhm.
I know that a lot of people are creating newsletters, and I didn't want to create one that sort of had a value prop with that had already existed.
Right.
And from what I could tell, there was not a one-stop sort of place to get these takes delivered right to your inbox.
Yeah.
And so that's where I guess you could call it candlelight or light bulb moment sort of like hit.
Right.
Um, and that's really the main value proposition is that it's a newsletter delivered once a week with PR takes that I found insightful over the past 7 days. The
Yeah.
audience, primarily PR and comms people.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, no. I think it's a brilliant idea because like you were saying on LinkedIn, especially, we're able to have this conversation with each other where, we were never really able to do that in the past. PR people, in effect, operated kind of on a vacuum. Well, these are our practices. This is how our agency works. These are our methods. Or, I worked in corporate for 11 years, and that was the way corporate was. That was the way that company went, and those were our policies and practices. And we didn't really compare notes much, but now, I mean, it's so refreshing to see this sort of transparency in the industry and work with each other, even competitors, really sharing ideas. So it's a great tool, and what you're doing by sort of aggregating these things is making it a lot easier and useful for PR people, and honestly for reporters too, because we're very interested in the way PR people work, because it's to our advantage as well. So how do you choose? I mean, how have you gone about choosing which things to include in the newsletter?
Um, I'd be lying if I said there was a highly automated, data-driven process.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I like doing that, for the job itself, but
Yeah.
right now I'm just um searching LinkedIn every day for certain keywords, scrolling through posts. I've become a really sort of power user of the save post on LinkedIn, as I scroll through if I miss
Yeah.
something. And then after that, there's sort of just two basic litmus tests. One is I like to ask myself, is this truly a hot take of some kind, or
Yeah.
is someone trying to sell me a service?
Right.
Uh, Granted, we are all selling in some capacity, but is the call to action at the bottom of a take, buy my service or sign up with our agency or something like that.
Sure.
And then the second is this a topic or post that I think either myself or others would be likely to comment on?
Hmm.
Uh, and there's no real science to back that up, but in my mind, if this is something that I would probably hit like or engage with or comment on,
Yeah.
then it's gonna go in. And I guess
Right.
as I think through it, the third is also if it's a new voice or not.
Right.
There are lots of people that are providing excellent commentary out there, and I do usually include them because they provide such great takes. But I also want to make sure that the voices that maybe don't post that much,
Yeah.
or maybe I haven't heard of you, I may not know you,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that's okay. That's actually a great thing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put them up there as well, so that way we can sort of amplify new voices as well.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. Let's just give people an idea of. I'm looking at one of your recent newsletters. You have something called the Take of the Week, and somebody's talking about the uh, the practice of spray and pray. And we've all heard that phrase over the years, right? But it's basically spit out hundreds of emails or throw it on the wire and then hope that you can pull in some fish. I was curious as to, why that became your take of the week and what you thought of how she, I think it's a she, yeah, Holly Jade Tanker, how she approached it.
Um, I liked her take because I think that the spray and pray model exists. I think it worked 15, 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, she makes a nod to something around like pre-COVID where it felt like a numbers game.
Hmm.
Um, the reason why I liked her take is because the bottom sort of like the last bullet point and then her sort of conclusion where it's about building relationships and how PR is no longer about throwing spaghetti at the wall. Um, I just love that
Yeah.
because that's how I like to approach working with reporters,
Right.
uh, to the sense that if you're only spraying and praying and throwing spaghetti against the wall, to use her
Mhm.
word,
Yeah.
you're not taking the time to get to know a reporter's preferences or uh, specific, I guess I would say, criteria that they might need or want to write a story. Instead, you're just doing lots of throwing stuff and not really listening and asking questions. So
Yeah.
that's why I really liked hers. To answer your other question about how I decide what the take of the week is,
Yeah.
again, no, nothing really data driven here.
Yeah.
It's really a combination of have I highlighted this topic yet already? Is it a new voice?
Hmm.
Or is this something that's like really I would say timely. So if it crosses that, if it checks any of those sort of boxes, that's something that I'll sort of throw in as like the take of the week.
Yeah, I mean it's really it's pretty brilliant. So what kind of reaction have you gotten so far?
The reaction has been like just really welcoming.
Yeah.
Uh, I would say I created this, you know, sort of newsletter, as I said, to create that sort of one-stop place for takes, but it's
Hmm.
having a secondary sort of like result, which is that it's creating these like legitimate moments of happiness and joy for these people that I'm giving shout outs to on LinkedIn and in a newsletter. It
Yeah.
makes me feel good to see that some like one of their peers, and someone they might not even know, read what they wrote and thought it was worthwhile to share with others. So it wasn't my main intention, but I'm
Hmm.
really proud that like some of these early signs are showing that like in addition to being welcoming, we're
Yeah.
also creating some joy. And the world is tough out there. So if we can put a smile on someone's face, or if I can put a smile on someone's face, it sort of is that much better.
Yeah, we need some smiles. We need a lot of smiles these days. But it's really like a misery loves company type of thing, or commiseration, like this is so great. I know now. I know I'm not the only one going through this dreck here, and I've got company in this, and someone to relate to and can share that with. So
Yeah. And I would say too that
yeah,
like anecdotally,
yeah.
I'm hearing from others via LinkedIn message that they're finding it useful. Someone sent me their take and asked me to include it.
Ah,
Um, so like it's been really welcoming. And I'm just again, I'm happy. I'm just glad that I hit on something that is making people feel really good about themselves and that it's also not adding to noise and actually creating value.
yeah, no, no, I think it's great. So let's look then at now looking at the different takes that you've been examining and going through your own experience. I know I have some strong feelings, and basically, it's the basis for this podcast is looking at what both sides are doing right and wrong. But what do you think that today's PR people, what are they doing right, and where are they sort of missing the boat in creating and sending pitches to reporters?
I mean, it's hard for me to say what's being for what's right and wrong.
Yeah,
Especially because usually reporters only post gripes. You don't actually know when something goes swimmingly well between a reporter and a PR person. They don't
right.
usually make that post. So I can't really tell you what others are doing. I can
Yeah.
give you my perspective, um, which is again, I think building relationships is so crucial.
Hmm.
Newsrooms are shrinking. There's lots of bigger companies taking up lots of oxygen in the room to
Yeah.
for reporters to write some of those, startup sort of like emerging company type stories.
Yeah.
So I you know, like to put myself into the reporter's mindset and ask like, you know, is this actually a good fit?
Yeah.
Um, you know, is this something that if I were reading that publication, would I read this story?
Right.
Um, and what I would also say too is that like there's no one right way to generate coverage. Actually, when I
Hmm.
was at Car Gurus, uh, the PR team, we actually put together a presentation on all the different ways that you can sort of get the same outcome or the same result, which is coverage. Because it's certainly more art than science, and it's not a math equation.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to say where people are sort of like screwing up.
Yeah.
Um, but what I would say too, what's different from, as we talked about the spray and pray from 15, 20 years ago,
Right.
also what exists today is almost like an endless supply of resources that did not exist then.
Hmm.
For example, I'm an avid listener. I know the folks at One Pitch have this podcast called Coffee with a Journalist, where
Yeah.
they actually talk about pitch preferences,
Wow.
whether it's length, subject line, attachment.
Mm-hmm.
And I love listening to this because
Hmm.
even if it's a reporter that I may not pitch,
Right.
hearing how different people like to be pitched
Yeah.
is something that I think is super interesting and it's going to help sort of create those relationships that we've been talking about.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you're right because it's first of all, I'll say right away that um, there are definitely agencies and people that I prefer to work with, and I think they're doing the job really well by doing all the things that you just said, where they understand my audience and what they want to read about. They understand how I work. We built a relationship, and actually, those people, when they send me a pitch, I'm more likely to open the pitch and read it and consider it than somebody that hasn't really done a very good job. I always talk about this one guy. This one guy, he'll send me a pitch. It's like 500 words, and I would die before I finished reading 500 words of a pitch. It's like, what? Don't write the story for me. And he'll bury the lead 300 words into this pitch. I have no idea what the news is. So I just stop. I stopped reading this guy's stuff. And I think he's working really hard. He's working too hard, I think, and not getting any results because it's just too much. There's too much junk in there. Um, so very willing to compliment and call out PR people who are doing a good job with me, that we built a relationship and it's working out, but also very quick to point out when, yeah, the pitch is misaimed. I got one. I'll tell you one. I just got this one last week. This person sent me a pitch. Now I'm an automotive writer, right? I get this pitch for I don't know how I got on this list of fashion. Somehow I got on a fashion beat list, and this person sent me a pitch with all these photos of these gorgeous models in the smallest bikinis you've ever seen in your life. All these pictures, and she's saying, "Oh, look at these pictures. You could use them." And I'm thinking, "Wow, brightened up my day." But it's nothing. What do I? How's that? What's that got to do with a car? I mean, it seems like if you were in a bikini like that, riding in a car with the air conditioning, it might get a little uncomfortable. So I don't know how it relates, but um,
Well, I
y-
think you hit on a key word there, which is that you might have been on a list. And
yeah,
and that's actually, I mean, that I think is where the problems there's like a massive sort of disconnect, right?
yeah,
Because that just tells me that either there's some sort of massive database in the back end that's just hitting copy and paste, that's just sort of copy and pasting, or whoever sent it to you probably didn't take the probably 90 seconds worth of homework to
yeah,
Google your name to
yeah,
see and look at the Forbes column and see it's all automotive.
right.
Yeah, it's not going to write anything related to this. Um, and it, it's not even like tangentially related, right?
Yeah,
Like it's not
yeah,
even like um what would be a good example? The software like inside vehicles. Okay, like
yeah,
probably not going to cover it, but like it's in the ballpark. That
right.
to me, so that to me, I think is the disconnect where a lot of reporters then gripe
Yeah.
because and that's a legitimate gripe because I think what a lot of PR and comms people forget is that like reporters are people.
Yeah.
Um, and like you basically took zero time to learn about me as a person.
Hmm.
So I think that little word list I think has a lot of implications.
Yeah, it just drives me crazy. But um, if the person's written the pitch in a real professional way, and a creative way, I'll actually take the time and say, hey, I know what happened. Somehow I got on your list by mistake. And they actually appreciate it because then they cross me off and they don't waste time sending me stuff anymore. But if it's just, really sloppily written and you can tell they didn't give much thought to it, then I just blow it off. But no, I'm willing to say, if it's done well, oops, somehow I ended up on a list by mistake. So let's take the other side of the scrimmage line here. When you're working with the reporter, then what gets to you? What do reporters do that um, sort of rankle you where you say, I'll be right. We're on a bike. We could say this. You get off and you go, oh, that reporter's an asshole to work with. Geez, make my job that much harder. What do reporters do that maybe we could do better?
It's a great question. I, I think I think PR people have to uh have a little bit of a mindset refresh. It's not the reporter's job to respond to our pitches and emails. And I
Mhm.
think there's a misconception that PR people are deserved a response. Um, and I think if anything, we have to convey a compelling reason for someone to respond to us.
Mhm.
And so, and especially again, like as newsrooms are shrinking and news cycles are becoming 24/7 doesn't even begin to describe it. If there's anything more constant than 24/7, I think that's where we are.
Yeah.
Throw in all the agentic AI sort of like ways that news is being created, like content's being created.
Yeah.
I don't think there's that much that reporters can do differently. The only thing that stinks, I would say, is that like if you line everything up, interviews, you send maybe there's like some supporting material, data, maybe there's a customer for a story, all
Mhm.
the rest of it. And then unfortunately, sometimes the story just gets scrapped.
Yeah.
And and it's usually not the reporter's fault.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, again, there's something happening like in the macro environment that
Right.
causes these things to happen.
Sure.
But it's definitely like a rough look on the PR people side. But I
Yeah.
would say that usually, and I wouldn't say that I'm dropping F-bombs or anything like that when it happens,
Right.
but I would say like going back to my point, how reporters are people too, and so are PR people. Um, the reporters that remember that these situations happened
Yeah.
and try their best to reconcile
Yeah.
are the ones that you want to go back to again because it was if something like that happens, it's no one's fault, but you try to move on and you try to sort of like reconcile. That's my take. That's
I'll tell
my
you.
take.
Yeah, that's my hot take. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I went from a newspaper to Chrysler when I made the jump over, and I didn't know what to expect. And I'll tell you, it was really eye-opening to see it from the PR side to now to look back at the side I was on, and I had reporters that um, were reporting inaccurate information, and you'd contact them and say, "That's wrong. You have to make a correction." They go, "Oh, I got it from my source." And you go, "Well, your source is bullshit, is wrong." And I'm telling you, "Oh, well, you're a corporate, so of course you'd say it wrong." I said, "No, I'm telling you as a former journalist with the same ethics, that holds the same journalistic ethics, that respectfully you're wrong and you do need to correct it." And I had some that just refused. They couldn't believe that a corporate PR person would be telling them the truth. Can you imagine that? And it was really eye opening. But you see things from both sides. It's pretty crazy. So, so Brian, how does somebody see the newsletter? We keep calling it the newsletter, but it's called what? This Week in PR Takes,
That's
right?
correct. This
This,
week in PR takes.
in PR Take. How does somebody see it? How do they subscribe to it if they're interested?
I'm usually posting every Friday on LinkedIn. It's also this week in prtakes.beehive.com. That's BEEHIIV. And for those that are connected with me, you can also send me a LinkedIn message if you want me to try to include your take. No promises. But that's the URL. I'm posting again almost every Friday on LinkedIn. Um, and it's been really fun so far.
That's awesome. Well, best of luck with it. Brian, it's great to talk with you again and catch up with you. This is a great thing you're doing. So many, many thanks to you for being with us in this episode of Tales from the Beat. And I'm going to look forward to every issue of this week in PR Takes. We'll put the link in the metadata here in the description so people can click on it and give it a read and subscribe. And it's really cool. So thank you very much for being with us, and wish you the best of luck. And many thanks to all of you for listening or viewing. That's Tales from the Beat. For now, I'm Ed Garsten, and I'll be back soon. with more tales. Take care.